Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have a full review of the Galaxy M55. Let's get started. And this device is part of Samsung's M series, which is not so well known. The Galaxy A steals a lot of the limelight, but they are very similar to the Galaxy A. However, they are cheaper because they do not integrate glass, they do not integrate aluminum frames, they do not integrate water resistance. So these are some sacrifices that Samsung makes in order to continue cutting the price. In this case, at its launch, it was priced at 7,999 pesos in Mexico. That's more or less $440, although remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. However, it took me a little while to bring this review, so at the time of recording this video, Samsung has officially cut the price and now you can find it at a price of 5,999 pesos, which is more or less $330. A price at which it definitely becomes one of the most attractive options in the segment. I think it can compete in a good way against several of its rivals, so come with me to know it in detail. On the front design, the truth is that there is a very important surprise because Samsung does not usually incorporate very thin bezels. So this is one of the Galaxy with the thinnest bezels on the market, which is remarkable because it's not a very expensive device. So it looks modern on the front, but it does not integrate Gorilla Glass protection, something that will definitely be a weak point. On the right side, we will find power button and volume buttons all in a plastic frame. At the top is the microphone, and on the left side is the tray where we can place the SIM card. At the bottom is another microphone, the USB port, and the speaker with a single wide perforation design, unlike other Galaxy that have a grid design. On the back we find a plastic cover. In this case I have the option in black color, although I see that it is a color like dark blue, but well, officially it is called black color. It is also available in light green color, so there are two options to choose from. It's a device that has a slim design, 7.8 millimeters to be exact, and that's something that doesn't usually characterize Samsung devices very much. So this one has elements that we don't normally see in Galaxy devices. Thin bezels, slim design, but it doesn't have any water and dust resistance. Still, it looks like an interesting option to me. Definitely, what I think we're going to miss the most would be some special protection on the screen. But talking about the screen, it has a size of 6.7 inches with 20:9 ratio. Its resolution is Full HD Plus 2400 by 1080 pixels. It reaches a density of 392 pixels per inch, and obviously we are in front of a Super AMOLED screen that reaches a maximum peak of 1000 nits in brightness. So it's a screen that you're going to display with very good quality under sunlight. You know, Samsung has a feature called Vision Boost that will change the colors a little bit when you're under sunlight to improve your viewing. And in the accessibility options, you also have the extra dimming option, which is going to lower the brightness of the screen further. So even at night, it can become a little bit comfortable. Generally, this extra dimming option, I have it set up within the routines to automate the experience at night. It has 120 Hz in its refresh rate, so wherever you look, it is a screen that obviously will have very good quality to view your content, not only from the front but also from the sides, as this type of technology allows the screen to continue to look very good, even from the side. It maintains good brightness, very good color, good contrast. It has absolutely everything positive in this regard. It is also a screen compatible with HDR, so in YouTube or compatible applications, you can see these contents where there are some areas of the screen that shine brighter to give more realism to everything you're watching. And at the software level, we'll find everything that we normally find on Galaxy devices. So you have the eye saver mode, which is going to have a kind of filter on top of it. Obviously, we'll find the dark mode, and it allows you to select whether you want the refresh rate to be automatically adapting or set to 60 Hz. The curious thing is that it does not include the color calibration setting to select a tone a little more natural or more saturated, something that is quite curious because virtually all Galaxy have those options, but here we do not find them. Now let's talk about the sound. It integrates two speakers, one at the bottom and the other is in the earpiece area for calls. So it does have stereo sound, that's a good thing. The sound is obviously not going to stand out too much for its quality, but having stereo sound is a plus in the category. Let's listen to a little test, although it's not the same as listening to it live. As I say, the quality is not extraordinary, but for the price range it sounds good. Here the detail is that Samsung, for some strange reason, removed the equalizer. It is a feature that usually highlights all Galaxy devices, but is not present in the Galaxy M55. It does have Dolby Atmos, but you can't access a dedicated equalizer like you can on most Galaxy devices, so it is very strange and would be a weak point. The feature that is integrated is the independent application sound, which remember that will allow us to send the sound of certain applications to a Bluetooth speaker, while retaining the sound of other applications on the phone. Something that can be very useful at parties if you are sending music to set the mood for the whole party, but suddenly you want to listen to an audio on your cell phone or want to watch a video. In this case, you do have these capabilities, which are not normally on other Android devices. Regarding the headphones, note that there is no jack anywhere. That is a very important absence because generally in the mid-range there are still several options that do have a jack, so you'll need to use headphones through the USB-C port, or failing that, use Bluetooth headphones. And regarding this, there is good news because it not only supports the basic codecs but also has support for aptX, which has more resolution, or also for LDAC, which has even more resolution, as long as you have compatible headphones. Then you can really enjoy good quality wireless audio. In this case, we will notice that it has two microphones to record stereo sound, something traditional and normal. It is not going to be too remarkable, but let's listen to a test recorded with this microphone.
Esta es una prueba de audio captada con los micrófonos integrados del Galaxy M55.
Obviously for vocals it won't have any problem. I think it picks it up with good quality. But next we will see a video recorded with this device in a much noisier environment to notice how it behaves there. As you realize, in environments with too high volumes it can generate some distortions. Nothing really serious, but I would not consider it a specialist for recording concerts or something like that. Let's talk now about the front camera. In this case, it integrates a high-resolution sensor. It is 50 megapixels with f-aperture 2.4. It also has fixed focus, so the aperture issue can make this camera suffer a little bit because it doesn't have such a remarkable light input. Remember that Samsung allows you to double press the power button to quickly access the camera, and you can do the same gesture to rotate between the front and rear camera. Moreover, this gesture works even if the device is turned off, locked, or from any other app, so it's a very good gesture to open the camera with speed. And speaking of speed, note that the device is not so agile to take selfies in a very fast way. If we hold down the shutter, we start recording a short video that we can continue if we slide up, and if you slide the shutter down, you can usually take a burst, but this device does not have that option. What it does have is a button in the upper right corner to enable the beauty options, where we will have 4 different parameters, but we can also enable some filters of different colors that we can preview in real time, or we can also set the color tone of the selfies, something that Samsung reserved only for the high-end, but now it has also moved it to this device to allow us to choose whether we want warm colors or more natural colors. As you can see, it has 2 different levels of amplitude, which is pretty cool. The pictures from this front-facing camera definitely that have a remarkably high level of detail. Besides the colors are accurate, we find natural tones. There is not much more to say. Remember that it has a good enough amplitude, and even though it has fixed focus, if you have your arm outstretched, you still have a good level of detail in the face. Although if you're really close and want to get some curious detail on your face, it's not going to be possible. Indoors, the camera performs average. In this case, it was a cloudy day, so there wasn't as much lighting. I find that the colors lose a bit of precision and also saturation, so you need some well-lit areas for a better result. In backlit scenes, the preview is not optimized, but the result after processing the photo is very good. Note how in this case, it recovered all the texture of the clouds, so it balances well lights and shadows. Finally, at night, the result is also good, especially if you have some light source nearby. However, if you are backlit at night, the result is definitely not so nice. Although using the night mode improves quite a bit in terms of detail and light balance. Notice how the portrait result would come out at night, which I think is good unless you get up close, and in that case you'll notice that there's little level of detail, but overall it performs well. But in the daytime, we confirmed that the portrait quality really is very good because it does keep objects in focus, unlike the vast majority of devices in this price range. There are even a lot of high-end devices that are not able to keep the foreground objects in focus, but only faces and body parts. So definitely that they excel tremendously in front portrait photography. Let's talk now about the rear photographic system. We'll find the 17mm ultra-wide camera with 8 megapixels and f2.2 aperture plus fixed focus. Then the 24mm main camera with 50 megapixels on its sensor, f1.8 aperture, optical stabilization and autofocus, and finally a 5 megapixel macro camera with f2.4 aperture and fixed focus. In this case, as any device has a small delay in the preview and in fact also has a significant delay when trying to capture the photograph of almost half a second, then it is very difficult to take the exact moment with this device. The burst takes almost a second to start, and in this case it allows you to take up to 30 pictures in this mode. In this case, it retains this button in the upper right corner where we can access some filters of different colors and you can adjust their intensity, or you can also activate some facial beauty effects with the same 4 parameters that we see for the front camera. If you tap on screen, you can adjust the exposure and focus, but you can also access the Pro mode where we have more parameters to modify, for example the ISO, which can go up to 3200, also the shutter speed, which can go up to 10 seconds. We will also find the option of compensation, focus and white balance. Although remember that this device does not allow us to take the picture in RAW, but only gives us a little more parameters such as contrast, highlights, shadows, saturation and tint, but we do not have such advanced options. Fortunately, a QR code scanner is integrated directly from the main camera interface, and it will also be able to automatically detect some document when you are trying to scan it. So just press this button and it will do the cropping automatically for you, although it is only a cropped image and it doesn't have some tone optimizations, nor can you add more pages to the scan. Now, in high resolution mode, the device can take 50 megapixel pictures, and in this case it makes good use of the sensor information, as you do get a picture with a good level of detail. In automatic mode, the photographs will be 12.5 megapixels, and outdoors the result seems positive to me. The main camera seems to have a good quality without too much chromatic aberration, without distortions, with good color accuracy. Remember that in this case the day was cloudy, so the colors may look a little different compared to the sunny day, but note how perfectly the gray sky appears and does not get to burn. Although the ultra-wide camera definitely has more problems when capturing the color, you notice much paler colors, and it definitely shows that it is not a high-quality camera, as it has a bit of distortion at the edges and also chromatic aberration, so it is a simple camera, but at least an ultra-wide camera is integrated. In motion scenes here on a cloudy day, notice how a ghosting effect appeared, which is definitely not nice. Something similar happened with the main camera, so it may be because there is a little less lighting on the cloudy day. And indoors, the ultra-wide camera struggles a bit more as there is presence of more noise and colors don't look as saturated as they should. The main camera improves in terms of noise handling, although colors are still a bit paler. And in backlit scenes, the preview to an optimized light. However, the result with the main camera is very good. It really balances lights and shadows very well. Although we can't say the same for the ultra-wide camera that probably didn't detect the face and therefore didn't make a balance as attractive as the main camera. At night, the ultra-wide camera has several complications to collect a good amount of light, although using the night mode improves significantly. However, there are some areas that appear with little detail and noise is still present. The main camera performs better in these types of scenes, and with the night mode, it improves the definition even more. Even if you zoom in, the device allows you to use the night mode. So without night mode, you get a picture with a little more graininess, and with night mode, it improves noticeably. So it is highly recommended to use this mode. And in scenes of too much darkness, see how the preview would appear, and the result with the automatic mode, the truth is that it is not so nice. But with the night mode, it improves in a very important way. So I repeat, the night mode is highly recommended, and curiously you can also use the night mode with the ultra-wide camera, as I pointed out a moment ago, and there is a significant improvement, but still the result is not so attractive. Regarding the zoom, unfortunately Samsung doesn't seem to take good advantage of the 50 megapixel sensor, as you see how the maximum zoom is 10x and it just looks like super stretched photography. It maintains little level of detail. For macro photography, you cannot get as close to the objects, but applying a little zoom, the result can become very attractive. So I do not consider so useful the incorporation of the macro camera that has less accurate colors, plus the result looks inferior in level of detail compared to the one that gives us the main camera applying a little zoom. By the way, the device also has a panorama mode, which has a very good dynamic range, although it doesn't seem to be a high-resolution panorama mode, but it definitely helps you to have wider captures, and remember that you can use the ultra-wide camera in this panorama mode so that the width is multiplied. Finally, let's see how it fares in portrait photography, where it is also going to give us a good performance. Notice the details of the bokeh effect. The blur is quite good and with a sufficiently high level of accuracy. Although it is true that there are still some areas that it is not able to detect, but we would only demand that from a high-end device in general, it performs quite well in this aspect as well. For video recording, it is very good that it does have the capabilities to record in 4K at 30 frames per second with both the main camera and the front camera, although the ultra-wide camera doesn't have the same capabilities, but at least you can highlight that feature. It also has the auto-framing feature where it will use the ultra-wide camera and can automatically zoom in and out while you are moving through the scene. While recording video, note that there is a button to take pictures, another button to pause and resume our recording. You can also turn on the flashlight as long as you are not using the ultra-wide camera, and it has another button to rotate to the front camera without the need to stop your video recording, something that very few devices allow these days. Also note that there is the professional video option where we have very similar parameters to what we saw in the pro mode of photography, which is very good news, and even while you are recording you can go moving, for example the focus and other things, so it is very advanced. Something very good about this device is that the quality of the video recording is very high compared to the price, as it does support resolution at the price. And that is a very good thing, although the white balance can vary a little more than it should. Then it is not a specialist in video recording, but the fact that it supports the price is a very big advantage, although I insist the color could be varying a little more than we would like if we get more demanding. The ultra-wide camera does not have the same recording capabilities in terms of resolution, but either way it is useful to record with a slightly wider angle, and it seems to me that unlike other mid-range devices that integrate ultra-wide camera, in this case the recording quality is good enough. Although indoors, definitely that this ultra-wide camera suffers much more, because if there is much presence of noise, although in this case it was a cloudy day so it is a little less light than normal, but definitely this ultra-wide camera if you need very good lighting to have a better recording quality. The main camera also has this noise present, although I insist it was a cloudy day and therefore it is a little more complex to record. The colors are not as accurate, so it is a camera that does require very good lighting to have a better result. In backlit scenarios, it can also suffer a little more than it should, especially this type of backlighting that is quite intense if it tries to illuminate the face a little, but it does not do an extraordinary job with either the ultra-wide camera or the main camera. In fact, the focus can get a little confused, so it is best to record with the light from the front and not from behind. At night, we will notice a very similar result to what we saw indoors, so the main camera also picks up a little more noise than we would like, but we do not have such a high level of detail, confirming that we do need a good level of illumination for a better result. The ultra-wide camera is going to have much more noise and less definition. In fact, also less contrast is perceived, so it is not recommended to record if you are not in a good lighting. The stabilization, fortunately, yes, it is good, even recording video in FPS, so if you are walking, I think the movements are well compensated. If you are running, it is not a specialist, but still I think it has a very good level of stabilization. In fact, it also has a super stable mode that will use the ultra-wide camera, so you lose a little definition, but if you are running, I think you gain a little more stabilization with this mode. Again, not an expert, but it is very good news that it integrates this mode. It also has a fast camera that, if it is relatively well stabilized, can go from 5x, which can be very useful for recording people, or it can go up to 60x, which is a little short for recording landscapes, a little more spectacular. This is a feature that Samsung has not yet improved for several generations in all its devices. Fortunately, it also integrates slow motion. In this case, can be in 120 frames per second with HD resolution. The result is obviously simple, is not something so spectacular, and you can get up to 480 frames per second with slower but without as much detail. However, I think it is good news that it does integrate these features. With respect to other details, for example, the focus, you will notice that it handles well is a device that responds quickly to this type of accelerated movements, although here again confirms that the white balance can be a little unstable. Notice how the color can be changing a little drastically, but in terms of handling the focus, I think it does a good job. As for the zoom, obviously you will not be able to switch between the ultra-wide camera and the main camera and can reach up to 10x, but it is perceived with a lot of noise and little detail, so it is not so advisable to apply zoom when you are recording video. On the other hand, with the front camera, the result is very positive due to the good level of stabilization that it has, although this also produces that there is a significant crop, so you need to stretch your arm well if you want to come out well framed. But most mid-range devices do not have stabilization on the front camera, so this stands out as a strong point, although it is not a specialist again, because observe how when you are backlit, it is going to have a bit of trouble because it will overexpose too much the rear area, so it will not give us a very nice result in terms of balance of lights and shadows, but the fact that it is a video in 4K with stabilization makes it gain a lot of points in its favor. Indoors where there is not so much lighting, it can obviously start to suffer with much more noise present and the movements are perceived a little slower in order to gain more lighting. The same will happen at night where noise will be even more present, so as the main camera requires good lighting if you want to have the best possible result. I would not consider it a specialist for video recording with, but the good news is that, for example, it integrates fast camera with the same configuration that we saw in the rear camera. In fact, curiously, it also integrates a dual recording mode, which is something very uncommon in Galaxy devices, usually only comes available for the top of the range devices, and it is very good news to see this feature available in a mid-range device, so you can have a split screen recording. The focus is still active, although the focus is still active. In split screen, the focus is still active, although it does not allow you to zoom. That would be one of its main weaknesses of this mode. What it does allow you to do is rotate between these cameras, and it also has another picture-in-picture mode where you have a small frame for one of the cameras. This frame, you can move it along the screen without any problem. You can also resize it, which is something that very few devices allow, so it's perfectly fine. And the fact that it is available for top-of-the-range devices is something very rare in Galaxy devices. It is perfectly fine, and the fact that it has rounded corners also makes it look much more modern. It also has focus enabled, so we only wish it also had zoom enabled, which is not possible. However, it is a very good dual recording mode. And by the way, I was forgetting to mention that this camera does not have autofocus, so it just stays with fixed focus, something that is normal in this price range. Regarding the software, it comes with Android, something that is very good because it has the latest versions of both Android, and Samsung also has an excellent update policy promising 4 years of software updates and 5 years of security patches, something that very few manufacturers can promise in this price range. And of course, you know that Samsung usually includes a software with many features, although in this case not as many as in other series, but still has good points in its favor. For example, we will find the Edge panels that can help you a lot with tools in this sidebar, both shortcuts to applications as well as shortcuts to contacts and many other tools. Also tools to trim the screen. And for example, leave a fixed element at all times. Then it is a bar that really adds many functions. And you can even download more through the Galaxy Store. The device also integrates always on display. Although it is a bit curious because in its configuration does not include different covers, then looks like a very simple function to display the clock. But within the application of themes, if you can download more covers, then the operation is a bit strange. But if you have a deeper level of customization, by the Galaxy Store, the device also integrates always on display, although it is a bit curious because in its configuration does not include different covers. Then it looks like a very simple function to display the clock, but within the application of themes, if you can download more covers, then the operation is a bit strange. But if you have a deeper level of customization, of course, there is also Bixby available by holding down the power button, so you can talk to this Samsung voice assistant that, while it is not a specialist in requesting information, if you can get to control in a very good way aspects of your device, for example, you could tell him set the brightness at 50% or activate the do not disturb mode, or very simple things really through voice commands. And remember that also within the experimental options of Samsung Labs includes a function to force all applications can operate in a floating window mode, with what you gain much higher level of productivity, because even applications that are not available in this format on other devices here, if you can use them and you can have several applications open at the same time in this format, you can resize them, change the position, even changes transparency. Then really, if you are one of these people who like to have many things open at the same time on your screen, this device will satisfy you. Much obviously also has the split screen mode. Then if you combine it with the floating screen mode, can achieve a great deal. Oh, it also includes some other gestures that are a bit more common on other devices, like double tapping the screen to turn it on or turning it face down to activate a silent mode while it's playing. So there are several little things there, and in this case the one hand mode resizes on both the X-axis and the Y-axis. So it's very good. Unlike other Android devices, it also includes the modes and routines feature where you can automate a lot of things, and that can also sync with your watch and other Galaxy ecosystem accessories. So for example, while your watch detects that you are exercising, your phone can be set up in different ways, all automatically, or you can manually create some routines to automate various things on your phone. I, for example, have some routines so that when I enter the gallery, automatic rotation is activated, and when I leave the gallery, this is deactivated, or while I'm in certain applications, the screen is not turning off every time. Then it is very easy to really automate all kinds of things on your phone using the function of routines, whose configuration is quite simple, simply has some causes and some consequences. You set everything very easily, and is one of the differential points of Samsung because you do not find it in other devices. Within the gallery also has a function to hold down on some image to extract it as a sticker format or a cropped image format. Also includes an object eraser in the photo editor, although it is not yet with Galaxy. And there is, but it still works in a good way. In fact, also allows you to create a collage very easily from the gallery, or you can create an animated GIF with several photos. And of course, remember that includes Samsung Members, which is an application where not only you can have some kind of technical support or report problems, but you can also access different discount coupons with some companies. That Samsung has collaborations with like restaurants, pet stores, and many other things. So the software is very complete, although in this case it includes a vibration motor on the Z axis. So it is not as used as other Galaxy devices that have the motor on the X axis that give a much more pleasant feedback when interacting with the system. Let's talk quickly about security, because it integrates a fingerprint reader that is inside the screen. In fact, its placement is quite curious because it is a little lower than usual. Usually readers are a little higher, so you can get to have a little learning curve, especially if you are holding the phone in this way. Can become very difficult to reach this reader. Reader that is a little lower also has a support for a maximum of 3 records, unlike other Android that support 5 records, so you are a little more limited. You could not register as many people you trust or as many fingers for a more comfortable unlocking. For convenience, has facial recognition as almost all devices today, but it is not too safe. Fortunately, it also integrates Google Extended Unlock, where you can select a specific location, and while you are in that location, the device will stay unlocked, or also while it is connected to a watch or a headset, so you have a comfortable experience in that aspect. It also has a feature called automatic lock that will allow you to restrict several options that could put your cell phone at risk if you are not that knowledgeable. Then with a simple switch you can disable several things that attackers could take advantage of. And remember, it also has Samsung Pass as its password manager, so to fill out forms you can simply select the default option, and by checking for your fingerprint it fills it out automatically. But not only it remembers passwords, but also from the keyboard you can access Samsung Pass, and from here you will be able to access other notes or your entire catalog of passwords, or even specific card information or addresses. So all these sections you can save them by your fingerprint and then insert them quickly from the keyboard. This is one of my favorite features. Also, the secure folder is available where you can save files and applications, all protected by your fingerprint. In fact, the secure folder can also be customized to change the icon and the name, and obviously that is a little more hidden. There is also an option called Secure Wi-Fi, with which Samsung gives you a kind of private VPN. This is very useful when you connect to public Wi-Fi networks, because in case you are using applications that do not use encryption, some attackers could intercept what you are doing, and that could put you in vulnerability. And this is another point that usually do not find in devices that are not Galaxy. For free gives you a gigabyte per month, but you could also pay some plans to extend this capacity and be more protected if you tend to connect much to public Wi-Fi networks. Also has available Samsung Kids, from which you know that you as a parent can configure what applications can use your child. Even you can authorize if you want or do not want to have internet connection. Then it is a safe environment that can be very useful to lend the phone to a little one and do not enter other applications and make payments and things like that. In addition, Samsung also includes a collaboration with McAfee, so you have an integrated antivirus from which you can scan all your applications to maintain a safe experience and not just rely on Google Play Protect as happens with other Android manufacturers, and obviously also integrates an option to find your phone in case you get to lose it that connects to the entire network of Galaxy devices. Then you also have here an additional function in addition to the Find My Device function that bring all Android devices. Say that here you have two ways to try to find your phone. Also includes a maintenance mode that you can enable so that your device is locked in terms of all your files and applications when you send it to repair. So the experience at the level of software security is very good in almost all Galaxy, and this is no exception. And now let's talk a little about the battery. Has a capacity of 5000 milliamps, but you know that this number usually translates in very different ways in the autonomy time in different devices. In this case, for example, gave me 3 hours with 8 minutes using the drainer that I always use running in the foreground. A figure sincerely low. Normally I would expect about 4 hours on average, but here is almost an hour less. Although running this drainer in the background while we played YouTube videos in the foreground, I think it improved, reaching almost 4 hours. Then thanks to that, it has good management of the drainer in the background while playing YouTube videos in the foreground. I think it improved, reaching practically 4 hours. Then it has a good management of applications running in the background. I think if you could get to have an average duration, but it will not stand out in terms of battery life over competitors. Remember that you also have a battery saving mode with which you could try to optimize its duration, and you have a super saving mode that could help you in some emergencies, or if you are going to have a long trip and you will not be using your phone too much, you could activate that option. And it will consume very little power, and you can tell it what applications you want to be allowed. Obviously, you have a much more limited listing. And here's the bad news is that the charger is sold separately. It supports 45 watts charge. That's a very good thing, but you have to buy it separately. Fortunately, you don't need to buy specifically the original Samsung charger, but you could also buy power delivery chargers that have this same power, and it's going to be compatible. In my test, with 15 minutes, it recovered 31% of energy using the official Samsung charger. In 30 minutes, it recovered 62%, and the full charge, it finished in 1 hour and 2 minutes. So yes, it can get to charge fast, but it is an issue where Samsung does not usually stand out too much. Obviously, we are not going to have here wireless charging or anything like that, but if you have smart charging in case you want to leave it charging all night, although it is not so recommended, but at least if you can get to protect itself to charge slower, or you also have the charge lock that would be the maximum level of protection to charge only up to 80%. And it is curious that Samsung also integrates a level of protection, let's say intermediate, because it will charge up to 100, and then it will let the 95 discharge, and then it will charge again up to 100 in order not to overcharge the battery and damage it over time. So it has good protection mechanisms. That is something very positive. For connectivity, if we will find compatibility with networks without taking something that is very positive, in fact also brings an option for you to choose which applications can use your mobile data and which applications can only connect to the internet via Wi-Fi. Speaking of that, supports Wi-Fi 6, so we will also have a very good download speed. This is useful if you're going to download songs or series when you go on a trip. For example, you need it to download everything very fast. Although talking about travel, in this case it does not integrate and without, so you could not just add a mobile service by scanning a QR code. That I insist, that is something very useful in travel. Includes Bluetooth 5.2 NFC, so yes, you can do mobile payments, also setting up Google Pay or other similar apps, but you don't have FM radio. However, one thing it does have is wireless projection through Smart View, so you could, for example, hide notifications and have your cell phone screen off while you are projecting. In fact, you could also project just an app while you are doing anything else on your cell phone, so it's pretty advanced projection, but it can't project to your screen via cable. However, you can connect it to your car's screen via cable or wirelessly, and with respect to the sensors, there is nothing specific that we can complain about. In fact, it has very good support. It includes geomagnetic field sensor, it includes gyroscope, the proximity sensor is physical, so it has very good features here. Let's talk quickly about the ecosystem that can get to have this device. That is one of the strongest points of the Galaxy devices. You could connect a watch, take pictures directly from the watch, control music from the watch, answer notifications. Galaxy bots can also read notifications and things like that. In fact, you could also answer calls from your Galaxy tab directly connecting to your cell. However, here the disadvantage is that at least in Mexico and many other countries, Samsung does not distribute the Galaxy Book that would be your computer that could complete the ecosystem. Then there are some options that end up being useless that even though they are present in this phone, you cannot take advantage of them because there is no Galaxy Book still includes connectivity to Windows already pre-installed so that more easily you can connect to your laptop even if it is not Samsung, and through Quick Share can send and receive files to your laptops if you install this feature or other Android or Galaxy devices. So here it stands out that Samsung does not depend so much on Google when creating its own ecosystem, unlike the vast majority of Android devices. In fact, it has Smart Things, which is the Samsung application that serves to connect to your home devices so you could manage your air conditioning, your lights, even your refrigerator and other things as long as they are compatible, and Smart Things has very good compatibility. It also has a collaboration with Microsoft so that OneDrive is fully integrated into your gallery, although it would be nice to also let integrate Google Photos, but you have several options so the ecosystem is very complete but still could be a better. Now we talk about performance. This device incorporates the Snapdragon processor 7 Gen 1, a processor that Samsung does not use in other devices, so it can become very remarkable incorporating a Snapdragon processor. Most mid-range devices, Samsung incorporate Exynos processors or MediaTek, but here we have a Snapdragon processor, also has 8 GB of RAM that could also help a lot, although that we will check in a moment. It took 2.8 seconds to open each application. In this case, definitely I consider that it is a very good time showing us that the chip has good speed. Observe how it behaves once you are inside some applications. It seems to me that it does not go as smooth as we would like if it has some small stumbles, but it does not really seem that the device freezes at some point. Especially it may come to cost a little work at the time of loading for the first time certain multimedia content, but observe how it behaves once you are inside some applications. It seems to me that it does not go as smooth as we would like if it has some small stumbles, but it does not really seem that the device is frozen at any time. First time certain multimedia content, but note that after it stays much looser and fluid. Note that we are also in this case switching between different applications, and despite showing a small white screen that is not at all comfortable, seems not to restart too much applications, although just at that time there was a restart. But as I say, you usually will not have restarts applications, but if you could have these screenshots that could become uncomfortable, especially if you have a little bit of a problem, especially if you are using a device that has a small screen that does not freeze. Uncomfortable, especially if you're used to other devices that do not have such transitions or have animations a little more optimized. This is something that Samsung still needs to correct, but fortunately it seems that these 8 GB of RAM are very well used, especially in Samsung. Usually the minimum we require is 8 GB of RAM for a good performance, and in this case, as you can see, if you can get to have a good experience. And in addition, it is going to offer us RAM Plus with up to 8 additional gigabytes, although by default it comes with 4 gigabytes. However, in my experience, the Samsung RAM Plus doesn't really help much. It comes with 128 gigabytes of storage, which is pretty good, although I must say that it is becoming more and more common for other devices to have 256 gigabytes. So it's just good, I correct. Not quite good, but fortunately if you can put a microSD up to a terabyte, so you could take advantage of this a little more, and remember that you can connect your OneDrive or Google Drive account directly to the device and it will appear within your My Files application, then you have very good options in this sense of cloud storage. Samsung does not specifically detail what the RAM and storage version is, but we are going to do a test of exporting video to involve the processor, the RAM and storage. Remember, we are talking about a clip with a total duration of 1 minute. These are videos recorded in 4K with this device, so we are going to test it a little higher than what we usually test with devices of this price point. So we are going to test it a little higher than we usually test with devices of this price point. Generally, we test with devices of this price, but since this device records in 4K, we are going to test how it goes in that resolution and ready. It took 1 minute with 16 seconds. The truth is that it is quite slow to export video in 4K. The most appropriate will be to do in full HD the editions, although remember that since it records video in 4K, that's why we put this test. And for the games, we will find the Gaming Hub, which is where we can manage everything we have installed or even play content without installing them to save some space on the system. Then obviously these games are much simpler, but to play heavier content, you have to install them. And in this case also notes that there is the Gaming Hub configuration, although curiously in this case, Samsung does not include additional options to manage your games. You cannot install plugins, you cannot have applications in floating window easily when running your games. Then honestly it seems that is very cut in this section of software. In this case, in Call of Duty by default, it gives us the very high graphic quality at a high frame rate per second. In fact, we can go up to a maximum rate keeping the graphic quality very high, something that is very remarkable. Obviously this is possible because it is a Snapdragon processor. Then we are raising the expectation in this game, as in fact it allows us to activate all effects simultaneously and also some experimental features. So the test that we are putting it is honestly definitely very high, but the remarkable thing is that the processor is compatible with all these options. However, at the time of testing, we realized that it is not able to maintain very good stability. As you can see in the graph, has ups and downs, but really does not freeze drastically. Its minimum peak was 34 frames per second, which really is not so bad, but it does not have so much stability. Its average was 46 frames per second, so if you are one of the most demanding in terms of stability, you are not going to have a good experience. Although fortunately, in terms of graphics, if we have a good detail, good effects, good shadows, explosions, and other little things more, although curiously, after a while playing, if it gets to be hot, will be limited to 40 frames per second, and in this case the temperature, yes, it was quite high, 44.8 degrees Celsius. So I wouldn't say it's a gaming expert. Even though the processor has good compatibility, it's not really going to give you such a smooth experience. In fact, when recording the screen, you're going to notice it's going a bit slower and it's hard. So definitely the best thing to do would be to play with simpler settings, even though the processor supports higher settings. In the Legends game, we set this on medium quality at 60 frames per second to give it a proper test for its price, and in this case, curiously, in the first stage it went up to 120 frames per second, as the processor does have those capabilities, even though we had told it we wanted 60 frames per second. But that is a detail of the game that always happens. It actually maintained a very stable experience when it went down to 60 frames per second. So the performance, I think, is good. You have good playability, although again the temperature could make it suffer, especially in long games, as in this case. Even in a 5-minute game, it got up to 44 degrees Celsius. So if you like to play for much longer, it may be that the heating will take its toll, and then the performance may drop a little more. Sure, this is because the device was quite focused on being thin, so I do not think your priority is the games, although in this case the experience was good, but the temperature, definitely, that was very high. Then in the case of SpongeBob, by default it comes with high resolution and high quality, although in this case for the test we went down to medium resolution, keeping high quality and 60 frames per second. Curiously, the smoothing effect is not available. The experience again was quite good in terms of the gameplay experience. The fluidity and performance are aspects of the device. Fluidity and performance are aspects that are definitely going to give you a good gameplay, but again, the temperature was quite high. Generally, it is always approaching 45 degrees Celsius, which is something we consider very high, although in this case it was recording the screen, and obviously that is a much heavier job. It stands out that even recording the screen maintains the experience of the game. Even recording the screen maintains a fairly smooth experience, but then without recording the screen, the temperature dropped to 41.3 degrees Celsius, so it is much more friendly. Then it seems that when recording the screen is when the device can become overheated. In fact, the previous test we had also done them recording the screen, but it is when the device can become overheated. In fact, the previous test we had also done them recording the screen, but it is when the device is overheated. We had also done them recording the screen, but it is the same as we do in all devices. Simply here, the curious fact is that apparently without recording the screen does not heat up so much. Then if you are going to play without recording gameplays, I think if you are going to have a smooth experience recording gameplays is where you are going to face difficulties in the heating. Lastly, on Henshin Impact, by default it has low quality, but in this case we went up to medium quality at 60 frames per second to see what it was capable of without recording the screen. The device doesn't have that much stability, but it is fluctuating, but you don't really get to notice that much when you are playing. However, you don't see a smooth experience, as most of the time it is below 50 frames per second, although it did have a spike near 60, but really most of the time it stays a little bit lower than adequate at. It is adequate in this case will be to play with much simpler graphics quality, as in this case recording the screen came to be very close to 47 degrees Celsius, so it is exaggeratedly hot. If you are recording the screen without recording screen, you know it will make a little more fluid experience, but still not a device so focused on gaming. However, I do not consider it a disaster in gaming, so we could say that it is a balanced device by other aspects that has better. As a conclusion, can be an interesting alternative for those who want a decent Galaxy and do not want to spend too much money. The fact of incorporating 8 GB of RAM makes the experience a little better. To make a mid-range device, Samsung, the screen is good, the sound is good, the cameras are decent. Overall is a balanced device, although it is not as recommended for those who want to record gameplays. For now, this has been all for this video. I hope you liked. If you did so, you know you can indicate it, and see you next time.